Greetings from the cosmic horror. The stars are right once again, and the great old ones are allowed us to talk about for 30 plus minutes H.P. Lovecraft, the horror writer who is a genre unto himself. I am your cosmic host, Mark Griffin, executor of the Lovecraft estate on Yawguf, joined in by two from the mature world, David Guffey, a professor at Miss Patonic University, and Richard Wilson, who's finally freed from that dark room. For today's episode, it is an open forum, no guest. We're going back to our original format. Just us talking about what we have seen or read and heard since last year. I thought we'd start off with one of the most talked about shows of last year, not necessarily Lovecraft, but it was definitely by somebody who was influenced by Lovecraft, The Fall of House of Usher. What'd y'all think of it?
I really
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, that was very well done.
Yeah.
Definitely left me wanting more, even though I realized that it would cheapen it to have like a Fall of House of Usher part 2
Right.
or season 2, that type of thing. But it's one of those things as far as, particularly for fans, both of like Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe more so, as far as if you're a fan of those. And or Succession, really, as far as if you've seen the show Succession, they kind of put a lot of that type of that feel into it, of this kind of like this awful wealthy family all backstabbing each other, which was just very much my cup of tea.
I liked how they put little Easter eggs, like someone,
Yes.
they all died. There's something related to a Poe story.
Right. Yeah. That was done without feeling like it was, because I think when you get into some of those Lovecraft stories, like we were talking about Miskatonic, the comic book, and they were just trying to hit you with all this kind of, look out, there's some rats in the walls, like that.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel that way here. It felt, even the Pit and the Pendulum bit, when it finally came up, I was like, oh, they're doing that. I wondered how they were going to get the Pit and the Pendulum.
Right. Yeah.
They were smart and clever, and well written.
Yeah, I was real surprised by that one. And I was surprised by a lot of things. I wasn't expecting, like I was worried how an orangutan was going to attack somebody. They use like the lab animals,
Oh yeah.
I think probably one standout character in there was Mark Hamill's Arthur Pym.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
He was almost unrecognizable.
yeah,
I didn't recognize him initially because he was in the gloves and the glasses and the beard and all that type of thing.
and I would definitely like to see almost like a prequel or something about about his adventure in the Antarctic and how that.
Yeah, you're getting like you're talking about the Lovecraftian aspect of it, as far as like that indication was that he was on something along those that he had that kind of journey, and then that's what led him into his hooking up with Bruce Greenwood's family.
Yeah, that was really good. And we can jump on a different subject. Different thing to talk about. Xenoscope. Y'all familiar with that company, aren't you?
Yes, but I don't normally read.
I'm familiar with the covers of those comic books,
yes,
but not the
covers are-
interiors.
Right.
That is usually they have some type of what I guess some heroine usually wearing like some type of really sexy attire and fighting kicking ass.
But it's some type of public domain character like Robin Hood. Instead, it's a sexy Robin Hood with a
Right.
bow, and there's a sexy lady Sherlock Holmes teaming up with her.
Right. Where they decide to capitalize on the Lovecraft theme, so they did like a Rise of Cthulhu crossover, 33 issues.
That sounds excessive.
Yeah, I picked up a few issues just to see what was going on, but I was about to pick up all 33. But they seem heavily influenced by August Derleth's version of Lovecraft. It's almost like if good versus evil, Dagon, and and Cthulhu, of being rivals. And I thought one of the more interesting bits of it was that that Lovecraft was a hard drinking monster hunter who moved to San Francisco and married a woman named Anna, or they were cohabitating. I'm not exactly sure.
Gotcha.
And I think
Hard drinking.
Yeah.
I just completely missed this. I don't even know.
Well, that's the saturation point,
Yeah.
because there's so much Cthulhu and Lovecraftian-ish type of stuff out there that, as far as there might be show up in a show that you'd never think it would be, like
Right.
a Law and Order or something like that.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
a random episode in which, this guy, got the Necronomicon, and
yeah, anyway, but Lovecraft had a sire, and so his descendant Henry Lovecraft is is joined up with Spencer Holmes, who is a relative of a famous literary figure as well, and they're trying to take on the Cthulhu and his minions. Dagon gets quite a lot of prominence in as well. And they had the King in Yellow, and he looks like a plague doctor that Rob Liefeld would have designed.
Oh,
He's got hooks and chains and everything, you know.
Does he have pouches?
What is
Yeah.
he carrying in those pouches?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if he had any pouches in there. Yeah, but they have and I guess it was like it did so well that they're actually going to continue on doing it. You know, like have like even more series with it. Yeah, and there was also I hadn't heard it before, but it was like a mate of Cthulhu who was in it. It's like IDH-YAA. Ida Yah. I say
Is that how you put
I-
phonetic? You guess sound it out.
I guess, you know, but I thought something they might have made up, but it came from Lynn Carter. That was like something he had. But anyway, that was like what they've been doing with Lovecraft over there. And it's typical kind of like, you know, Xenoscope, you know, story, you know, it's like not anything really great, but it was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. It's like, you know, but of course the women always look good, you know, you never can complain about
That's
that.
that's
Yeah.
their strength.
Yeah.
They're good at that.
Yeah.
The covers.
Yeah, the goodie of the women. All that. You got True Detective on your list?
Oh yeah. I guess you guys have you been watching True
Yeah,
Detective?
I've watched-
You
I
haven't
haven't
watched
seen it
Yeah,
yet.
I'm caught up to what the most recent one was at episode 3 from
Yeah.
last Sunday, which was, you know, even more so
Yeah.
as far as like, yeah, there's something very, you know,
Weird. Yeah.
occulty going on here.
And they've tied it back to season 1 with the whole Travis Cole, Rust Cole,
Yeah.
and whatever the thing with the orange was in this last episode.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
weird.
yeah.
Weird
I
to
hadn't
have
picked up on
that.
the Travis Cole thing until you said something about it previously, and then now I've got like an ear out for it every time they're
Yeah.
mentioning it on.
How's it compared to the original?
Well, it's a bit soon to say, and they're
Yeah.
like 3 episodes, you know, into it really.
What the original had going for it was all those little monologues that Matthew McConaughey did.
Yes,
And it was
yeah,
so
that's
dramatic,
right.
and it's like it's something you could really dig into and
Yeah.
think, oh man, he's talking about, you know, time and space and
Yeah.
all this. And there's nothing like that. This is more straightforward story. So we'll see. I mean, maybe Jodie Foster will rip one off here, you know,
Yeah.
anytime. But
Yeah, should be giving, you know,
I
could
was-
do one of those on her of her own.
yeah,
That's was definitely the high point of the first season.
Yeah.
You know, Matthew McConaughey.
It was also again that kind of roller coaster ride because it was a weekly thing, so you didn't really know what was going to happen. As far as is this just a straightforward serial killer show, or like they're dropping a lot of Lovecraft and cosmic horror stuff in here for something that might just be now we're just trying to find out who's doing this. You know, that kind of-
well, I rewatched it over the last few weeks, and it held up really well. I enjoyed it. But I think you could even. I was trying to think, you know, like the current season doesn't, like I said, doesn't have anything like Rust and his monologues. If you took Rust out, would it still be pretty, you know, I mean, how good would it be?
That was yeah.
without him doing
he
those little
He
those
was
things.
such a compelling protagonist, and Woody Harrelson is some sounding board to play off of him. It's like the normal, well, by comparison, the normal
Right.
guy or whatever. As far as looking at him with that reaction every time he would go into the these nihilistic monologues about
Right.
humankind was the evolution of consciousness was a mistake and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, because it was so Thomas Ligotti-esque as far as like, oh, it's so good as far as the stuff that he was just going, and they would just be doing these ride-alongs as far as in terms of, so how was your day like that? And then he'd answer him with the evolution of consciousness was a mistake.
They had that one
That's
scene
not
at
what I asked.
the tent revival or whatever, and he's like, "You show me a man that's only doing good for the reward or the
Yeah.
fear of hell, and I'll
Yeah.
show you a piece of shit," or something like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, there's just so much to chew on. They were just chewing up the scenery, and this current one is more straightforward. But I've got to see the whole thing before I make any judgment. It's been good.
That's
Well
been the
done.
problem with the other 2 seasons. Everyone immediately out the gate starts comparing it to season
Right,
1 as
right.
far as not as good, not as good. Like just let the whole thing before
Yeah.
you compare it to
And they weren't terrible. They just weren't the first season. That's all. So
Well, I don't know. The second season.
the second
pretty
season
bad.
was unfocused and had trying to do too much, but I liked season 3 a
that's the
lot.
one with Rick Springfield, right?
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Well, there you go. That
Yes.
explains a lot.
Yes, yes, that was the problem.
That's the problem. They didn't have more Rick Springfield or less Springfield because he wasn't in it very long
I couldn't say.
and almost unrecognizable.
He was unrecognizable.
Yeah.
I would have never
If
dreamed
somebody
that was
hadn't
him.
said something later, like, did you catch his cameo? I'm like, wait, what now?
And was that how he really looks, or is that a makeup job? I don't know.
Yeah, as time got hard, on him.
Yeah, something like that.
It's hard to know, like with Hollywood actors anymore.
Right.
What do they really look like when no one's around? There was a children's Cthulhu story that came out last year, Adventures of Cthulhu Jr. and His Friends by Dirk Manning. And I thought it was going to be like some type of like, homage, like Harvey Comics, like, Casper the Friendly Ghost and Hot Stuff, because the artwork kind of like looked like that. And but it was like it more focused on the father. It was like that Cthulhu stays in, and kind of is more about him. Because I was actually hoping to be you see more about Dashley Dirk trying to attempt to abduct Cthulhu Jr. And but it and they did have one part where grandfather Yog Shoggoth comes over to visit, stuff like that.
But these is like in like say like illustrated like a kid's book type of deal, or were they like a comic
Like a
format?
comic book.
Okay. I
It was
wondered if they were, what their method was.
it came out as a free comic book day for one issue, kind of like in like the first issue, and then later was released as a trade. I don't know if they ever produced any more of that. And the artwork is okay, for what it was trying to do. But I wish they'd focus more on Cthulhu Jr. I would have liked to see more like his antics. What
Was
is
he meant to
Cthulhu
be?
Jr.
Was he
doing
like
now?
a playful, or was he kind of like like a Stewie from Family Guy, where he's evil, but like, oh, isn't he cute?
He was more of a playful character,
Right.
It's kind of like a hot stuff,
Yeah.
It's like he's not evil, is all.
Hmm.
And Dirk Manning seems to enjoy doing like type of Lovecraftian type stuff, and he has an element called Nightmare World. And the Armageddon is over, and the devil has won. And it's like his latest collection of stories from the hit line Shadow Web Comics. And he's like 13 Tales of Terror of Lucifer's master's sinister plan to own creation. And so I have not read them or anything, but I did notice that, when they're talking about his like, Cthulhu Jr., that came up.
The Cthulhu Jr. That's, I guess, as far, yeah, like a kid's Lovecraft was reminding me of that the Seussian, satire adaptations of Call of Cthulhu and Dagon, because I was wanting to see more of those, but I don't think that the guy that did those has done a third one yet. It's just because those were such an elegant mix of, like this Dr. Seuss type of writing structure and illustration and that type of thing, but clearly the subject matter was just straight up adapting those stories.
You had to do that right. I can imagine like, rushing to one.
Yeah, you got to, yeah, that's very kind of like, I've got to sit down and make sure, do it correctly.
Feel like you're just forcing in a story and all that. And the Three Stooges versus Cthulhu came out last year.
Wow.
And that was better than I imagined it was going to be.
And this was a comic?
It was a comic book. It was a one shot. It was done by American Mythology. And they always find like some odd things to do. They're like doing like, like a Fright Night. They're continuing stories of that. And
Just throw against the wall and see what sticks.
yeah, and they got the rights to Zorro Adventures.
Did the Three Stooges give Cthulhu a lot of slapstick comedy business, and that's how they defeated him?
Open the eyes.
Where they had to return the statue, and they had to go to Lovecraft for help. They came across the Isle of Raleigh and found the statue, and Cthulhu came out and tried to get the statue and all that, so they had to return it. And I was surprised at the amount of limbs that Curly lost in this story. I've never seen so many like amputations going on, especially done so comically,
Is dismemberment is played for laughs.
Yeah, and all that. So that was kind of the biggest surprise for me. For what it was, what I was expecting, I thought it was quite funny. I think Ramsey Campbell enjoyed it. We talked to him. And there's another comic book series called Miskatonic High. And I think it made me think it was like adaptation of the Resonator, or that
yeah, the Miskatonic, that's what, or Miskatonic University, that's what it was, because it's yeah.
There are at least 22 issues of it, and it's described as the bastard love child of John Hughes and H.P. Lovecraft, or Archie versus Cthulhu.
I thought it was Archie was what I was thinking of towards, as far as was that kind of mixing Lovecraft with Archie comics.
Yeah, the artwork,
not a combo I would have thought of.
Of course, I knew. Well, they had that Archie horror line going on for a while.
Yeah,
and they had like
there's that. Yeah,
the Afterlife of Archie.
Yeah, but in terms of like regular, original recipe Archie.
Yeah,
right.
And then one comic you're familiar with, Batman: City of Madness.
Oh, that's really good. Considering it's because I think so many nowadays they've been doing so much of this, mwahaha, the Batman last and all this horror stuff that really just feels derivative and not scary. And that's one of the few that I was very pleasantly surprised with, particularly the big reveal of quote unquote the Batman from the under Gotham or that type of thing, where he turns around and he's got the face full of like tentacles and that type of thing, and he kidnapped the little kid off the street and says, "You're going to be my new Robin." And then as far as this saying, like, show me who it is that killed your dad, and he's targeting some guy, and then he's like, "That's not who killed my dad." He goes, "What does it matter? Let's just kill him anyway."
I like the artwork for it.
Yeah, that's what really sells it, I think, as well as the fact that whoever is writing it has a good grasp of like all your other characters. Like Two-Face comes to Batman for help because suddenly there's a third voice in his head and he doesn't recognize that voice and he knows something's wrong. And then the what was it? The ventriloquist. His puppet Scarface turns on him and he kills his puppet, and then shows Batman later, goes, "No, it's cool. Look, I made a new one," and he's carved this like face like into his hand, or and holds it up, and there's just blood like dripping off of it, or showing that whatever's happening, this kind of cosmic horror stuff that's going on under Gotham is infecting everybody.
And then, did y'all see the Batman, the Doom that came to Gotham?
I finally, got around to it.
I enjoyed it. I mean, it was a little bit, sometimes I thought the animation kind of didn't hold up that well, but it was well done.
Compared, to the source material, which went more for horror, and this was going more for like Saturday morning cartoon action.
That may have been what that may actually be a good way to put it.
Yeah, because there was more and more of these Batman fighting someone, and I don't remember those being in the original, as far as there wasn't constantly some kind of possessed person and Batman fighting him, like that. Is so they get more action, you know.
Yeah, I do miss the it wasn't Mike Mangione who drew it, but he did write it.
No, he did the covers and he wrote it.
Art style was really good. Richard Pace. No, excuse me, Troy Nixie was the one who drew it for the graphic novel version. And I thought it worked really well for what they were doing in that.
Yeah. I overall, as far as it was like say 75%. I liked as far as I think the art was better. They did better job on that than they did with the
Gotham by
Gaslight, which was way too brightly lit and plain, and whereas at least in Doom that came to Gotham, you had a lot of like the horror-y elements of like Cthulhu busting out of the ice and that type of thing, and or the creepy Mr. Freeze type character and the penguins and all that stuff.
I was find it interesting how they're able to connect them, like it seems so obvious, like after the fact that the penguin would be in Antarctica.
That's why Mike Mignola is such a master of, he knows his Lovecraft from throwing all that stuff into Hellboy all the time, and he knows his Batman. So, easy. He's well suited to the task.
And you would want to like also mention about Jonathan Hickman's Gods.
Not in a positive light.
You guys say not positive at all.
As far as somebody again, where you're talking about incorporating Lovecraftian stuff into like Marvel comics, which goes all the way back to Doctor Strange. And like Shumagora, and the Living Darkness in Japan and those types of characters. And he literally just shamelessly in there has, "Oh, look out, it's the old ones," and it's Cthulhu and that type of thing. Like, okay, you're not even trying to be original, or this was inspired by, and that kind of thing. And then has this character that's this shameless John Constantine knockoff, but he's using Jason Blood's hairstyle of the red with a white streak in it. Like, this is, you should, you just copy and pasted things from other places and put them in here, and look at this cool new magic stuff we're doing. Like, these things already existed, and Doctor Strange shouldn't be, deferring to this new guy as the real Sorcerer Supreme or whatever.
I normally like Jonathan Hickman, but this is like the one that I just couldn't like.
This is where I'm like, you left X-Men and Black Monday Murders for this.
Yes. Bring back Black Monday Murders.
That's when talking about Lovecraftian, because that had a lot of those types of elements to it. These guys who, like these Wall Street, fat cats that are clearly, in bed with some kind of cosmic horror entity or whatever to make sure that they stay wealthy, and then the horrible things that they're having to do to sell their souls to stay in that position of power.
Which could also take us back to that Fall of House of Usher.
Yeah,
that's all same thing. That, and you also want to mention about Al Ewing's Store run.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like as much as this not overtly Cthulhu or older gods or whatever, but one of the things, he's gone back deep into like actual Norse mythology with his first few issues of Thor, and was talking about, I've forgotten them. it's not Asgard, but like Utgard or Untergard, and it's like the Asgard before Asgard. So these are the Norse gods before the Norse gods, and they are coming back and basically saying like the only reason you flourish is because we were gone. And then the Thor or whatever is this horrible, like this crazy old man looking dude or whatever who is like taking up the New York skyline or whatever and just like doing all this horrible environmentally like damage and that kind of thing. And then they cut back to like the version of Loki or whatever like that, who's this dude with like this kind of that was like a kind of like a goat skull type of thing for a face or whatever, and is doing all this ha 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 while you were overtly attacking him. I'm weaving this web of treachery. Like, oh, I like it.
Yeah.
What this is doing here.
So is it comparable to the Immortal Hulk?
That's what the feel I'm getting from it is he's deconstructing the character and putting a lot of because the Hulk had a lot of cosmic horror elements
definitely.
into adding that say it wasn't gamma radiation necessarily. The gamma radiation was just a conduit to something very bad on the other side, and that's similar here as far as this like this is the bad side of we see it's fun characters like Thor and the Warriors 3 or whatever. I'm like, yeah, these are the guys that before them who were not good people.
Right. Yeah. So he gives them the Immortal Hulk treatment.
Very
Who's
much
next?
so.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And so this Loki is not like the Marvel Cinematic
No,
Universe
he's
Loki.
not a good guy at all, and is not handsome and Tom Hiddleston-y for ladies to swoon over him. They both of the Unsgar Underguard, you know, or I can't remember the name of it. But yeah, the Asgard before Asgard, it was under Asgard. They're both, like the Thor looks like it is kind of like it would if Alan Moore was like this crazy, you know, thunder god type of thing. And then the other guy, like I said, had this like goat skull type of face thing going on, and was sitting in front of this fire as he weaved this web of evil. So
Nice.
We'll jump to some movies now. Older Gods.
I very much like that. I was not expecting a lot of they just found it on, was it on like Tubi or something?
I think so.
Yeah, it's on Tubi.
And then when I read about it later, it was that this movie was made as like a plan B when a movie that fell apart from lack of funding, and they kind of put this together at the last minute with just a few people and just like on location. The premise of it being what is the deal with the guy's friend gets involved with some kind of Cthulhu-esque cult or like Lovecraftian cult and disappears, and he's trying to figure out what happened to his friend.
That was genuinely it had some creepy moments in it.
Very.
Especially with you just look out the window and there's somebody in a robe and mask way across a field.
Yeah.
I mean that would be
it was mundane, but in the way as far as because you could really like be at your home and look outside. There's a guy in some kind of like what the heck? What is that guy in the woods? Like that.
It wouldn't even have to be in a robe. I mean, just some weirdo standing out there in the middle of the field. What are you doing out there? So
and then like it seemed like he went to his house, the one part where he had his car keys.
And there's one really big because they're interviewing the different like the cult members. Like there's some cops who are trying to figure. They've got the members of the cult and they're hassling and they're going, what happened there? What happened to these people and that type of thing. And one of the cops interviewing him is talking with the cultist and he's like, "You got to tell me." And then the cultist says, "Are you a Christian?" And he says, "Why do you ask?" He says, "Your God is a coward." And then he's like, "I don't understand. What do you mean by that?" He goes, "Your God won't answer your prayers." He stays quiet because he's afraid of waking my God.
oh.
And that line stuck with me just because as far as have they ever really done something with kind of layering as far as that there was the Lovecraftian older gods or whatever, and then they all are asleep and then Christianity in that void flourished and came about or whatever, and that you might have them like a world in which they exist, at the same time where say you could have something like an exorcist type of thing where you're going and you're trying to exorcise the devil or the priest or whatever there and realizes that, oh, wait a minute, it's not the devil, it's something older than the devil. And then having to pull in, your obligatory Lovecraftian protagonist who has this copy of the Necronomicon and is like, out of the way.
There you go. You got the basic plot of a new movie.
This is beyond you.
Then we got a movie in the making right here.
We would have to call it. It would be Yahweh.
Yahweh.
Yahweh. Yahweh Shoggoth or something like that.
Yeah, something.
Yeah. And then the other movie, Beach House, which I really liked.
I really liked it.
Yeah. That's
it was one of the most. I think I even sent you guys a text the night I watched it and said something like, "This is probably the most Lovecraftian movie I've ever seen." It didn't go too far. It wasn't trying to do too much. It was just a nice. Well, it was a really pleasant,
Very pleasant.
little spooky, creepy movie with a little bit of Cthulhu thrown in at the end, like in silhouette out across the ocean. So it was a lot of fun.
That's because it starts out relatively mundane as well. 'Cause it's
Yeah.
just like the kid and like his girlfriend go to his family's beach house, and then his dad is there also with like the woman he's been dating, or like the stepmom or whatever. And they just get decide as far as, well, it's a little weird, but we'll all hang out together and drink, and then
Yeah.
bad things start.
Right.
start.
Yeah.
And the practical effects are really very Cronenbergian as far as like just the stuff that starts happening to them, and then as far as the fact that the ocean in a lot of elements, is just as mysterious to us as outer space, the things that could be waiting for you under there.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Well worth watching. Maybe well worth watching again.
Yes.
We need to go back.
you heard it here. Last year we did a Hunter S. Thompson spotlight, and one of the movies that they talked about was the Banshee chapter. You watched it at least, Richard.
I've seen
Did
it.
you see it?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to
What
remember.
were your thoughts on it?
It was a mixed bag.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the premise is okay, but getting from point A to point B it just didn't work that way.
I liked Ted Levine and the Hunter S. Thompson analog-ish character that he was playing. I thought he really leaned in, gave his 110% on that, and that gave it kind of a different feel to it beyond your standard, like he's talking about as far as just we're investigating the weird thing and we've got to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, I wish it focused more on him.
Yeah.
And he was like the protagonist, because I would actually like to see a proper movie, with Hunter S. Thompson, against Cthulhu.
Oh, yeah, it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
And talking about as far as permeating other things, you get a Hunter S. Thompson type story, except
Yeah.
he goes down the Lovecraft rabbit hole.
Yeah, there was Damned Highway, which was Fear and Loathing in Arkham by Brian Keene and Nick Manitis. And it was kind of like another version of Hunter S. Thompson meeting Cthulhu, and it took place during the time of the basically essentially Fear and Loathing, the campaign trail during that period when he wrote that. And I wish that they had worked in things a little bit better. It seems like that they rely on a lot of coincidences to happen. He just happens to go to a bar where Senator Eagleton is being sexually tortured in it, or you just happen to be in there.
Mm.
And just things like that. And I think they could have easily had done that, by using that he finds this the fungi Chimyaga, and he takes it at the beginning and opens his mind and sees a whole new world, and he starts exploring it and stuff like that.
That's great.
And it could have been an easy fix, but it was they didn't go that way. And so there's way too many coincidences, and kind of like a From Beyond type of thing.
That'd be great. Yeah, that's a good idea.
And story-wise, I think you read Little Gods by Nick Cutter.
Oh, you mean Little Heaven?
Little Heaven.
Yeah, that's Nick Cutter did the Troop and the Deep,
Mhm.
and Little Heaven. Based off of those, I read that one, and I really enjoyed. There's a hook to it as far as like a cosmic horror-y things from beyond type situation where it's set in the 50s, no, this is in the 60s, and this kind of like it's a commune, not really a commune / church that's out in the middle of nowhere, because so that he can keep them isolated. And there's this Jim Jones type of preacher and that type of thing. The Lord speaks to me, and it's not the Lord speaking to me. But Nick Cutter doesn't shy away from doing horrible things to children. So, and there's a lot of kids in there, and a lot of really bad stuff happens to all the people that are there, because the protagonists are people that get sent over there because the mom of one of the kids that they split up, and the dad took them to this commune church, out in the middle of nowhere. It goes, please, I don't get my son back, please. And then that's how they kind of get involved, and they're like, that things are not right here, and they find out exactly how not right they are. Is
this newer?
Relatively newer. I read it on my earlier this past summer.
Okay.
Yeah, that should be out in paperback and Kindle and all that type of thing.
Is it on Hoopla yet?
Possibly.
Good thought.
Possibly.
And while you're looking that up, Destroyer of Worlds, the Lovecraft Country sequel.
Yeah, that was I liked Lovecraft Country better. I can see where they were just trying to do the trilogy type of thing, as far as we can make more, and this it was more, and it's a bridge. It has that feel like there's gonna be another one. And as far as it's just the continuing adventures of some of the people from Lovecraft Country,
Right.
And then it does open-ended enough that it was trilogy-esque. There's going to be a third one, and it was more of the same. As far there really wasn't, they didn't do anything different, all that much.
The first one could have ended there. It had a point.
Yeah,
and it did what it did.
This
And
feels like
one just
we want
oh,
money.
yeah, we're gonna cash in now.
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, the showrunner for the Lovecraft Country series, her idea for the second season, she had it, the title was going to be The Secret Kingdom, and basically implying it was going to be about the clan, and so there was any like clan elements in that story.
I don't think so.
I think they were trying to shoot if it sounded like there's whomever that was going to do their own thing as opposed to, oh, there's this sequel and I'm adapting it. Instead, it was because I think the end of Lovecraft Country, the show, didn't line up necessarily with the book anyway.
No.
It's there was that book at the end for like with this kind of foreshadowing of season 2 type of thing that I'm like, I don't remember that from the book.
Yeah.
So I think they were taking some liberties.
And
no, it's not.
Well, I have some audible credit.
Ramsey Campbell, we interviewed him, and you want to talk about some of the stories he's written, like the Three Births of Dayloft.
I very much enjoyed Three Births of Dayloft just because it's set into, as far as when we talk about things that need to be a trilogy, there was that reason there because it's kind of showing the kind of the enduring nature of these ageless evil and this guy as far as he encounters it once as a kid, once as an adult, once as an old man, and it's just kind of he thinks he stopped it. And then he comes back again in a new form. And then he thinks he stopped it and it comes back again in a new form, showing as far as that it's just never going to.
Right.
And then there was so much about, the like the power of 3 and that type of thing in there anyway, because as far as starts off with he and his 2 friends are like this group of Encyclopedia Brown type of sleuths. And then later it's his family, as far as it's him and his wife and his kids. So the 3 are there. But then this other family that's kind of the ones who are getting into all the occult stuff similarly, as far as there's the father, and then he has his grandfather, and then he has a kid. And the indication there is that when she comes of age, he has sex with her and then has a grandson, So it's this other like families that are going in, and then the protagonist's family gets roped up in the church that this guy starts, even though he's telling him, no, please. From the time I was a kid, I knew that this guy was bad news. Please do not get involved with this stuff.
So kind of reminds me a little bit almost like Stephen King's It.
Yeah, it does have that kind of feel of something again where you thought you put it to bed and then years later, like, no, you didn't. It's, or it's something that's ageless and cannot be defeated in the conventional manner.
So it's like that type of evil that just keeps coming back.
Yeah, as far as, whatever it is, it's not one guy or something that you can just, we shot him or we did this to him or ran him out of town or that kind of thing. He's just going to keep coming back.
What about Fellstones?
That one's, was another, I think, one of his more recent ones and is more self-contained and was a lot about, it had that almost like a Wicker Man-ish type of feel to it as far as but with that one, as far as this boy who tried to move away from, like his parents died and then these friends of the family adopted him, but they were clearly trying to shape him towards something, trying about his music and that kind of thing. And like, oh, don't you want to get into music? And, and your beautiful singing voice. And they were crafting him for a purpose, and he leaves because he can just feels like have that icky feel of like, I don't like being controlled like that. And then they managed to kind of trick him into coming back into town, and that's where a lot of the name of the town is the Fellstones, but also they have this almost Stonehenge type of thing in the middle of the town that has this very occulty type of, and then we have our festival at the Fellstones. Like, yeah, there's nothing weird about that. But that as far as him singing is like at a certain point when the stars align, certainly, and then he sings, in the middle of this, that something's going to happen, and that they were his whole life kind of like even maybe getting rid of his parents so that they could, make sure that he was, the conduit for what they were hoping for.
Good wholesome stuff.
Yeah, it was really good. But as far as it's a lot, much like Three Births of Dayloft, it was really good as far as there wasn't, it very elegantly written, and versus having just kind of, here's a monster, or that kind of.
I know a lot of this writing style is almost like more psychological.
Yeah, it's something if you adapted it, you would want it to be a show, so you could really like get into the depth of the characters instead of like, and here's the monster at the end, and that kind of.
And then there was the movie adaptation that was done in Spain of one of his stories, The Influence. And I think you saw that, Richard, on Netflix.
I don't know if I've seen that or not.
That
sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's the one where it has a similar, we're talking about the Fellstones as far as one of the daughters of the mother and who's in there who's in old age and dying and is on like life support equipment. has left and then made her family her own. And when she comes back, because her sister says, I can't take care of her on my own, you need to come back. But then you start finding out her mother was this horrible witch woman, occultist type of thing that mistreated him real badly. And that she's trying to cheat death by then just getting into possessing her granddaughter. And then it's like, you made my life hell. You're not taking my daughter. So then it's that kind of thing to it. And so it had a lot of visceral, like that type of feel to it.
Yeah.
Even though there were some bits here and there that I was kind of like, that were unexplained, that I don't know if they took liberties with the story or were like, who's this other evil boy running around that's helping people?
There was that kid that popped out of nowhere.
Yeah. Suddenly he's around there. Yeah. As far as keying cars for no reason and just being horrible. And then he's in on it. And they're like, well, where did he come from?
And you don't really know to the end of the kid may be like a ghost,
Yeah.
And it had very kind of like a hereditary, like Evil Dead vibe going on.
Yeah, the Hereditary particularly, because it did feel as far as it was this all kind of orchestrated, to take this, the kid, just this normal kid and turn him into something else.
I felt that the latter part of the movie was was probably the most puzzling. It seemed like there was some stuff missing from it. It's like, they took out scenes that would have been very important to explain what was going on.
Yeah.
And because it's like there are things that they do that they just don't explain it. And one graphic novel that I've read is Hellboy, The Chain Coffin and Others by Mike Michaeloni. And I was most interested in it because it had Almost Colossus in it, which is inspired by Clark Ashton Smith's Colossus of Yawning. Yawning is how you say that. And Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But Maglione, someday I'll say his name right.
Magnola.
Magnola.
Hand like this. And
Yeah, he manages to put his own stamp on the story.
It's always weaved a lot of that type of cosmic horror or just overtly like Lovecraftian stuff into the Hellboy stories. And again, more elegantly than Jonathan Hickman did with Gods, but just because taking things that were, again, from, and not feeling like he's kind of like, just copy and pasting it from somebody else, where he's kind of taking influence from it and putting it into that kind of that very absurd Hellboy setting of, good guy demon that fights Nazis type of thing.
They're almost like these stories using this source of inspirations, to tell like, even in more interesting stories.
Yeah.
And
But he works a lot of other, particularly a lot of European mythology and that type, because Baba Yaga had this recurring presence in there and all kinds of other stuff.
And
one of his rogues. Oh, Baba Yaga, you're back again.
Yeah. Has she appeared in any of the movies?
She was in the one with David Harbour.
Okay.
Because that one was very much pulling from the comics, and even to the point where it didn't really even explain why he's talking to Baba Yaga, because in that scene they clearly know each other and have fought each other, but they don't even get it. They just kind of insinuate a shared history as far as you again, Hellboy.
And I probably don't remember, there was like a TV series back in the 80s called Dark Room. It was like an anthology, and it ran on ABC. And I found all the episodes on Internet Archives. You can watch for free.
How many episodes?
There was like 8, I think.
That's one I must have missed somehow.
And
I'm not familiar with it.
James Coburn was the host of it. It wasn't popular. It didn't last very long, but it has some interesting talent writing it. Robert Bloch wrote a few episodes and adapted some of his stories and all that. It was a very young Helen Hunt was in it, and they had a story about like her story was like, that she thought that this person was a vampire and was trying to kill everybody. And then like, he says like, see, I'm not a vampire. He puts himself in the mirror reflection, all this. You see my reflection, all that, And that he may just do something else, like, eat garlic or something like that. And in the end, you find out he's not a vampire, but a werewolf.
You were close.
Yeah. And all that, but it had a very
Now you just spoiled it for
special body. Yeah, it was from the 80s, so I think I'm pretty safe.
It's all right. Yeah.
But and they were entertaining to watch. I mean, had interesting actors in it: Claude Atkins, David Carradine, Billy Crystal was even in one.
Oh, wow.
Brian Dennehy,
nice.
and June Lockhart. So we had
That's a pretty decent cast of people.
yeah.
Particularly, I guess, for something I said that, sounds like did not do well. Which only ran a few episodes and then they pulled the plug on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly why it didn't catch on. I don't know if it was like running against something, but like it just got more attention. But I remember seeing one episode air, and it was the one about the werewolf one. And I didn't realize at the time, Helen Hunt was in it. So that was I recommend that if you ever see it on like Internet Archives. And then Dark Intruder I learned about was a Leslie Nielsen movie. It was originally intended to be a TV pilot, and he's almost like the Sherlock Holmes like person who solves occult crimes. And they mentioned let me see, was it one of Lovecraft scenes, with deities in there. I can't remember which one it was. Azaroth, something like that. And like just solving them, but it didn't catch on as a pilot, so they just made it into a movie instead. And then we'll jump to the BBC's radio drama Haunter of the Dark. What we thought was a trilogy became
Was that was it what they call it, the Lovecraft Investigations? Is that
Yeah.
like the overall title of
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there was like plenty of deep cuts, the previous titles and everything, but it was, you had to like go back and like listen to them all, and it felt like more of the same. I didn't feel like, there was something like you just had to like go.
I listened to episode 1. I think I remember, and then was kind of like, that's what I remember having issue with the other season after the seasons after season 1, which kind of felt like they're just repeating themselves.
Yeah,
As far as their approach to it.
And they're always just missing whatever happened.
Yeah, it's we were almost here. Oh, he just I heard footsteps running down the hall. Someone he was just here.
And there's always some part where like this, like, well, guess who Donovan was related to? That's right, he was Charles Dexter's Ward's grandson. It's like some scene like that.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. And then a new book of letters of Lovecraft's have come out, called The Letters to Hyman Brodowski and Others. And Brodowski lived pretty till currently. He died in 2002. He was a lawyer and a member of the amateur press, and that's a lot of the themes for this collection, a lot of amateur press stuff in there. And Frank Belknap Long is going to be released later this year. And like I said, Lovecraft had a best friend, that'd be him. One reason I was interested in most of these book of letters was like because it has the letters of Helm Spink, who was from Louisville. He was a fellow amateur journalist. And they wrote letters both to and from Spink in there that survived. And he was the official editor of the North American Press Association, the North American Amateur Press Association. And he coaxed Lovecraft to write an essay called Notes on Verse Technique for the June issue of the National Amateur magazine. But it was too long, so he ended up printing it as a book instead. And it became called The Further Criticism of Poetry. Spink was a printer in Louisville, and he worked for the George Feder company. George Feder was quite a legend at the time. He was a very well-known printer, so he was working for somebody like top talent.
Okay.
And Spink visited Lovecraft twice up in Providence, and he invited Lovecraft to come and visit him in Louisville. And Lovecraft expressed an interest in going there and asked about the architecture of the city. And he also wanted to see Mammoth Cave. That was like his big thing. So I had like this image, like an alternate reality. If he lived past 1937 and he visited Spink, and he also visited another member of the circle who lived there, Harry O. Fisher. They go to Mammoth Cave and they hear the stories about Jesse James and maybe hear about the robbery happened in Russellville. He says, I think we'll go down and see that. And so, so my questions, y'all, what do you think would attract Lovecraft if he came here to Russellville?
The houses maybe, but maybe the Sexton House, maybe.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, that's a good idea. Good suggestion.
The cemetery.
The Sexton House being the ghost story here, the woman in the window.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think a lot of the historic houses here would catches attention. There was a convention that was held here for Kentucky to succeed from the Union, and he was very interested in Confederate history, so he might like that. And if he came in 1939, he might see the new football stadium being built, the Ray Stadium. And I like to think that he stopped at Cooksey's grocery store. And Cooksey would be probably one of the few people in town maybe familiar with his name because he actually sold pulp magazines there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so, he might show him, tell him about things to see and everything. And the Rock Crusher Pond might be another thing for him to see during that period. And there was a ghost story about a witch, who's supposed to live there, like would drag swimmers down to the bottom. Yeah. And then surely he would probably go to Adams, Tennessee.
Check out the Bell Witch.
Yeah, the Bell
that's
Witch.
a must. You gotta
Yeah.
check that off your list.
Yeah, he was,
Just don't take souvenirs.
yeah. And one of the big news items from last year was that James Wan really wants to adapt H.P. Lovecraft's Call of Cthulhu.
Weirdly, because it was part of, like, there was an article about a video game about the movie that hasn't even gone into production yet, and then people reverse engineer that into clickbait about James Wan making Call of Cthulhu. And I'm like, no, there's no credence to this, because you link back to where they're just getting like licensing rights to make a video game potentially based off of a movie that hasn't even started production yet,
Right.
which also will probably fall apart. So that gets people stirred up. It's happening.
Just like that. And when I first heard about this, I thought it was a hoax, but it was a Danish artist who dropped DNA samples into a 20-foot star-shaped sculpture into the Mariana Trench in 2013. And it sounds like a sacrifice to Cthulhu, to me.
Is that what he's feeding him?
Yeah.
He must be hungry after that long sleep.
Yeah. And all that to wake him up. And one thing I've been watching last year was like the Wild Wild West, the old TV show with like Robert Conrad, and I was trying to find some type of Lovecraftian reference and all that, but there never was one. It was like the one show they never seemed to have it. Even the fan fiction didn't even have it and all that, which really surprised me.
Okay.
About the closest I ever got was the Night of the Kraken, which is about like this religious fanatic who has like this sea monster that's attacked people. And they make some reference about like, being from the planet Uranus, there was like, and that was about the closest I ever got. But the thing is that it was very similar to another episode, which is a much better one, called The Night of the Watery Death by D.C. Fontana, which deals with an underwater city of Lemire. And I thought for a little contest for y'all, for test y'all's memory, and I thought like when Lovecraft died in 1937, and mentioned some of the books to see if you ever heard of these books or anything like that. They were popular in 1937.
I wasn't alive in
Yeah.
1937. We test my.
Well, let's just say they would just say that that they've held the test of
Oh,
time.
I understand.
That
Yeah, as far as if you've heard of these
Yeah.
books.
yeah, it's like Gone with the Wind. I know you've heard
Well,
of that
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yeah, that was also the best-selling book in 1936. Lovecraft never made a mention of that book whatsoever. Northwest Passage.
Heard of it.
What is that one?
It's an historical novel by Kenneth Roberts, told eyes of a Langdon town. Much of the novel follows the exploits and characters of Robert Rogers and his Rangers as their colonials fighting the British in the French and Indian War. It was adapted into a movie starring Spencer Tracy and became a TV show.
Well, okay, got some prestige on that.
Yeah, Buddy Edson was in that one. The Citadel by A.J. Cronin. It was regarded as a groundbreaking novel of its time and a National Book Award winner. It follows the life of Andrew Manson, a young and idealistic Scottish doctor, as he navigates the challenges of practicing medicine across interwar Wales and England. It was based on the author's own experiences. It had been adapted into several successful films, radio, television productions, including an Oscar-nominated 1935 film, which had Rex Harrison in it, which is the only name I recognize from there. Lovecraft was familiar with this author. Robert Barlow had asked him if he read his novel Hatter's Castle, which wasn't a horror story, but about a Scottish hatter who destroys his family because of his fantasies of noble birth. Lovecraft was also familiar with another book of his called The Stars Look Down, which is about the English mining that was going on. And So Victoria by Von Wilkins.
No.
You got me.
Yeah. A romantic adventure story set in the 19th century involving a poor girl who falls in love with a boy descended from royalty, resulting in the usual problems that happen. The Drums Along the Mohawk by Walter D. Edmonds.
Heard that title before, but no, I haven't read it. Or anything.
Yes, and
It follows the lives of the fictional Gil and Lana Martin, settlers in the central Mohawk Valley of New York during the American Revolution. And let's see, I don't know if it was ever, it looks like John Ford directed it. Apparently he simplified it, and a lot of people don't care for that story. Don't care for the movie, I should say. The Years by Virginia Woolf.
No, that I have, yeah.
The Years is about three generations of family, their intimacy and estrangements, anxieties and triumphs, mapped out against the bustling rhythms of London streets during the first decade of the 20th century. It was her last novel published in her lifetime. The Theater by W. Somerset Maugham.
Yeah,
I mean, I've heard of the
Yeah.
author, but
yeah, but not that one.
Yeah, the novel is a story about a successful actress and her husband, a theater manager. Her life and career is disturbed by a stormy affair with a young accountant. Gonna fall for the young accountants. Lovecraft mentioned he'd never read him, though he's been urged on him to do so. But he did read another book of his called Human Bondage. He said it was great stuff.
Oh.
And I think that was the one that was adapted into a movie that had Betty Davis's breakout role. And if you haven't heard of this one, I'm going to scream or something. Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck.
is that a Disney or
No, talking animal,
Yeah.
talking mice.
Looney Tunes?
Yeah.
That's it.
Many times, yeah. Yeah, the Steinbeck classic about two displaced migrant ranch workers who moved from place to place in California. And you have George and Lenny. And,
Look him and squeeze it.
yes.
They did do that.
Yes.
They got it in there.
Who is it? One of the more modern adaptations of that? Is it Malkovich and like Gary Sinise, or am I Mandela affecting that and that didn't happen?
Gary Sinise for sure.
Yeah, Gary Sinise sounds right. I'm not sure about Malcolm.
Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so that's what I'm guessing. But that's what I'm trying to visualize because it's been adapted into film numerous times.
If I remember correctly, Lon Chaney Jr. That was one of his big roles. But he got like critically acclaimed for playing Lenny in that. The Rain Came by Louis Bromfield.
No.
Yeah, this was a prominent writer before World War II, now largely forgotten, wrote popular novels and championed organic agriculture and socialism. This long, fast-moving novel set in princely state of India in the 1930s follows the intersecting lives of American missionaries, British bureaucrats, and Indians from all walks, and European expatriates as they all cope with the severe earthquakes and ensuing floods and cholera outbreak. A lot of stuff. Yeah. Lovecraft had read one of his novels. He had read The Strange Case of Miss Anne Svane. He found it disappointing as weird material, as though good as a novel. He found it better than Thornton Wilder's Bridge of San Luis Rey. We Are Not Alone by James Hilton.
No.
Nope. That's a no.
You probably remember some of his other stories he's written, like The Lost Horizon.
Yeah.
We're famous like Shangri-La, and Goodbye, Mr. Chip, which was made into a movie. Is one of his more somber works, portraying the tragic consequences of anti-foreign hysteria in England just before World War One. And of Lovecraft made a comment. He says, like, I must read Lost Horizon. He had a very interest in reading that. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
Pretty lengthy list.
Yeah.
I think as far as we added a lot of stuff into there. Thinking about it. Now, since then, I was trying to think if there's something else of note.
Yeah. Any Lovecraftian predictions for the coming year, Mark?
Well, it's an election year, so
Yeah.
So, 2024 vote Cthulhu.
Yeah. We're the greater evil win this time.
Could be.
Get my bumper sticker.
Yes.
I have a T-shirt that says that.
Are there any projects as far as, like say films or like TV shows, right? Because you've got the, like I said, True Detective, which has some, elements, of, Lovecraft into it. But I'm trying to think if there was things like, because that Call of Cthulhu movie, that's probably not happening. But in terms of other ones, I was trying to think if there were things that were slated to come out this year that had that
What's-
kind of element to it.
What's the name of the one I sent you the preview of, the Gods of the Deep or
There's the Gods of the Deep.
Gods of the Deep?
Yeah,
That
Gods
looks,
of, yeah, stuff like that. As far as whether there be some cool stuff
Mm-hmm.
coming out that continues on, because it's what's interesting is the permeate or the saturation of cosmic horror and Lovecraftian type thing doesn't ever seem like it's really we're over that. The way they say like zombies or there was big for a while, vampires or whatever. Everyone's like nah, we're gonna stick with it. We still like Cthulhu and all the Lovecraft stuff. We're gonna stick with it.
creating a sense of dread is, still
Yeah,
popular.
it's undying, like in Three Births of Daylight. It'll always that kind of sense of cosmic horror, existential dread will stay with you.
It's a universal thing,
Yeah.
I guess.
Well, it's essentially comes down to fear of the unknown, and fear of the unknown, is very eternal and not something that that gets old, because it could be anything like lurking out there, or it's beyond what you're capable of comprehending compared to a zombie, coming back up and then just coming up with a different nickname for what the zombie is, or a different setting to put them in.
Making them fungi, young zombies and stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah, like the Last of Us.
Well, that was different, at least. I did like this far as that they used a different method for going that way.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Oh, they are. Well, that's not Lovecraftian, but talking about zombies, they're doing what is it? It's because there was 28 days later, 28 weeks later, and now there's 28 years later.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Danny Boyle is coming back for
Oh,
it.
wow.
So I'm like, oh, this could be interesting.
Yeah,
Because I like both those movies, and they didn't really wear out their welcome as far as making more and more and more. But they were credited with that kickstarting that whole the running zombies type of thing,
Yeah.
where it's instead of shambling, monstrosities, it was people who were hyped up on super rabies and we're gonna tear you apart.
Has it been 23 years
No.
since? Okay. But in the movie would be 23
The
years.
movie is set, 28 years, I guess, after the original. That's why,
The power of, the theater.
yeah. You just gotta.
Suspension of disbelief. And Richard Stanley, we keep hearing that he would come on another Lovecraft
Yeah, because
sequel.
after Color Out of Space, I was expecting more, or he even laid the groundwork for more, because he was talking, he talked about what were the two element things that they said, like a newscast in that movie that clearly were laying the groundwork for other Lovecraftian.
I know Dunwich was mentioned.
Dunwich,
like,
that is Dunwich. That's what it was. Either that or Arkham Universe. No, both of them. He said because a guy was from Arkham, or something like. No, he's from Miskatonic University. And then they mentioned Dunwich. That's what it was. Because one of the researchers or whatever was where he was from. Like, no, really.
Now he's gotten in some hot water, right?
I think that blew over.
Oh,
That
it
was
did?
like an
Okay.
end seasons already thing, whereas like somebody was mad at him about something and tried to throw him into all that, and then they were like, oh, never mind, it was no big deal.
Oh, great.
But then
Well.
the problem after that was that, and then there was COVID, and then there was a writer's strike, and then there was an actor strike, and so many things that were greenlit at some point are now like not,
Right.
Yeah,
And since Color Out of Space was how long ago?
pre-COVID.
2018 maybe, or something like. Yeah, that's a long
It's been a
time.
while.
Yeah, as far as he's not like the hot young, like,
Yeah.
oh wow, let's strike while the iron's hot on there.
He seems to take his time making movies. It's like with Alan Dr. Moreau, which is
Right.
something he somewhat made.
I'm glad to see him.
Well, Nicolas Cage is always available. So,
He'll do anything. He's the hardest working man.
Yeah, he definitely knows how to be in movies. All right, we have nothing else to talk about. David, Richard, I see the stars are no longer right. We must cease all discussions until they align again next month. 30 plus minutes of H.P. Lovecraft is sponsored by Dashley Dirk's Cthulhu Jr. Abduction Contraption number 12. This podcast was created in association with LovecraftPod.com and the Logan Speculative Fiction Group with the help of the Logan County Public Library and the Great Old Ones. Special thanks to Kitty Tysons for being the doom that came to sound editing, and Joshua Dukes for being a beef twister. Until we meet again, may you avoid Prince of Cthulhu, who is now enrolling at Miskatonic University.